Well, when the United States accepted China's entrance into the World Trade Organization, that was the hope. History records. We believe that if we invited China to be part of the world economic and trading system, that as economic liberty would expand in their nation, so would political liberty and all the ideals that we cherish. The reality is, though, as we've spoken very plainly in this administration, the opposite has been largely true. That as the president has said many times, we've essentially rebuilt China into the modern economic nation that it is. And yet, in the midst of all of that, we've actually seen an increase in repression in China, whether it be repression of religious liberty, political liberty, the presence of detention camps in the Xinjiang province, the jailing of Christian pastors around the country. At the president's leadership, we've called China out on that. We've spoken very plainly on those issues. The president made it very, very clear that it would be difficult for us to make any progress in our trading relationship if there was violence in Hong Kong in the wake of millions of people taking to the streets in Hong Kong. And the president's taken a strong stand on that. And we are pleased that Hong Kong continues to be able to work through its issues, and China with Hong Kong in a peaceable manner that respects human rights of all of those people that are rising up. But what went wrong is that the West hoped for better, and it didn't come about. And so what President Trump has done is say, well, first and foremost, we're going to set this economic relationship on a footing that's based on the principles of fairness and reciprocity. Now, we're encouraged by the Phase 1 deal with China. That is the beginning of setting right a trading relationship that when we came into office, fully half of our international trade deficit was with China. The president was determined to change that. And the Phase 1 trade deal, not just dealing with the imbalance and including $40 to $50 billion in agriculture purchases, but also for the first time, dealing with intellectual property rights, which are rights that are actually spoken about in the Constitution of the United States. That we're finally beginning to deal with issues of forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, but it's just a beginning. And the president's made it very clear that we're going to continue to stand firm until we set this economic relationship on a balanced footing. But at the same time, we're going to continue to stand firm on behalf of American ideals. We're going to continue to speak out on behalf of religious liberty. We're going to continue to speak out on behalf of political liberty. And our hope is that by setting part of our relationship with China right, that will also create a better relationship overall to encourage China to continue to move toward recognizing all of those principles that we cherish among the families of the nation across the West.
The coronavirus, have we achieved cooperation with the Chinese at all? Have we got CDC teams moving into China? What's the state of play between us and the Chinese on the coronavirus?
Well, I know from very early in this process, we've seen China exercise a higher degree of transparency with the coronavirus than we saw in past instances. And we're cooperating with them fully. We've offered a broad range of assistance, and we'll continue to do so. The president spoke to President Xi not long ago, reiterating our availability to provide resources, support, CDC personnel, and China knows that we stand ready to flow those resources at a moment's notice. But that being said, we first and foremost have taken unprecedented action to protect the health and well-being of the American people. The President took action to suspend air travel, to suspend access to the United States from people in the region or non-citizens of the United States back into our country. We immediately instigated screening at 5 major airports across the country, and you all have seen the stories about quarantines that we've required people to participate in quarantines to ensure that the coronavirus doesn't make its way into the United States. We've had some manifestations there. The likelihood there will be more. But what you're going to see, Peter, is our administration is going to continue to take very strong action to protect the well-being and health of the American people. And we're going to continue to be there, not just for China, but South Korea and Italy. And any request for assistance from the United States of America will be met with the generosity of the American people.
Mr. Vice President, this administration cuts taxes. You lower the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%. That goes into effect on January 1st, 2018. A couple of quarters later, we're up at 3.5% growth. Into the first quarter of this year, we're still at 3%. And now it's dropped back to 2%. How disappointed, how worried, how concerned should we be?
Well, Peter, I think one thing that's obvious anytime you travel around this country is the American economy is booming. And it's booming because we have a president and we had partners in the Congress that believe that less taxes, less regulation, unleashing American energy, and free and fair trade would turn loose the incredible potential of the American economy, and it's worked. I mean, more than 7 million jobs created. Wages are rising at their fastest pace in more than 10 years. Unemployment's at a 50-year low. And we just have every confidence that the economy is going to continue to grow on the basis of those fundamental principles of free market economics being put into practice. And I do think, you listen to some of the commentary on the other side, Democrats running for president, talking about how the economy is not working. I got to tell you, I mean, it kind of reminds me of what Groucho Marx said one time, which was, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
By the way, you've got a lot of Californians in this audience, and you took away you capped their state and local tax deduction at a very low level by their standards. And I can tell from their faces they're enjoying listening to you, but they're all a little poorer because of you. Is there anything you'd like to say, any apology you'd like to offer?
It's the tax reform package that we did was really designed to, in so many ways, not only unleash the full potential of the American economy, but really level the playing field around the country. And we think it has. We really think it has. And I've got to say, the American people know it too, Peter. My wife and I stole away for a spring break last year. We had a day and a half on the beach at Sanibel Island in Florida, which it's on the West Coast.
We've heard of it.
Yeah.
Zero income tax state. That's the sort of thing our people know.
It is a zero income tax state. So we were down, we were on the beach. We had ball caps on and sunglasses, and I love to tell the story. These two big boys who'd read in the paper that we were there, these two big boys wearing Budweiser shirts came walking by, and this one fellow looks at me and he says, "Hey, you're Pence." I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Listen, you got to tell the president to keep doing what he's doing." Because he said, "I made twice as much money last year as I made the year before." And I told him, "I'm going to tell him exactly what you said." And then he took 2 steps away with a warm smile on his face and turned back around and said, "And I don't know what you do, but keep doing what you're doing too." And I told him I would. It's true. The American people know it. I mean, everywhere I go around the country, there's a sense of enthusiasm. Kids are graduating from college and finding work in the area they were trained. I mean, the economy is booming, to quote our friend Larry Kudlow. It's a booming American economy, and it is. I know that President Obama is, for some reason, taking credit for it in the last few weeks. But I think everybody knows that from the day that election was over in 2016, we saw the American economy take off. And then when this president delivered on his promises for less taxes, less regulation, unleashing American energy, free and fair trade, the American people made the difference.
Now, I don't need to remind a man who's won as many elections as you have of this, but cardinal rule of politics, voters don't cast their ballots to say thank you. They vote for candidates based on what they think the candidates are going to do for them next. So the economy is booming, but you've cut taxes already. What's the pitch? Why should the American people vote to give Donald Trump and Mike Pence 4 more years?
Well, I think the answer is that the best is yet to come. This is a president who believes that we're literally just getting started in exploring the full potential, not only of the American economy, but of, think about over 190 conservatives appointed to our federal courts at every level, including 2 Supreme Court justices. It is a record number of judges to the courts of appeals of any administration in history. And the president, if you go back to a speech that he gave to the New York Economic Club, Peter, in the fall of 2016. And this is a president, for all the progress that we have made, for all the good things that are happening in this economy, that's just what President Trump calls a good start. It's one of the reasons where you see this president calling on our agencies to continue to find red tape that we can clear out of the way without compromising the health and safety, well-being, or environment of this country. Clear it out of the way so businesses large and small can create jobs. We're already working, our economic team, already working on tax cuts 2.0. This is a president who's engaging nations around the world for new trade deals. We've begun with China. We have a ways to go. Phase 1 is just a beginning, but we've made it very clear to the UK. Now that Brexit is over, we're going to work with them as soon as they work out their details. With the EU, we're ready to do a free trade agreement. With the UK, we're ready to do a free trade agreement with the EU. We're already in discussions with Japan for a free trade agreement. This is a president who believes you bring all these principles to bear, you get 4 more years, and you just watch. You just watch this economy roll. You watch America grow stronger and more prosperous than ever before. And that's the message we're going to take to the American people.
Got it. Campaign coming up, African Americans. You and the president received about 8% of the black vote. The economy is growing. Black unemployment is down to historically low levels. And your support among African Americans has shot up to 10%. You represent the party of Lincoln. Is there anything you can do? Is there any plan in prospect during this campaign to reaching out to that 11, 12% of the country that for years now has simply not been interested in the GOP?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for mentioning the first Republican president, our 16th president, proved the point that our party was born around the principle of equality of opportunity. And this president has brought the exact same approach to this administration. We want to create an economy that works for every American, and it's working. It isn't historic levels, just as you said. I'll put a fine point on it. You have the lowest unemployment level ever recorded for African Americans. I'll never forget back when I was in the Congress, we had a conference in Baltimore, Maryland. Mm-hmm. And I went down to a homeless shelter before we had the Republican retreat conference. And I met with a bunch of local activists, largely African American families. And this one dad looked at me and he said, he was about my age, and he said, Mike, it's not like when we were growing up. And I said, well, tell me how. And he says, there's just no jobs. He said, our kids come out of high school, there's nowhere to go to work. And I have to tell you, in whatever the latest polls show, I don't know. I'm hearing every day from African American families that are coming up and saying, thank you. Tell this president it's working. We're opening doors of opportunity. not just for African Americans, but for every American. But in particular, we're seeing real impact. Lowest unemployment level ever recorded for Latino Americans as well. I mean, the economy is working. We've got a program for opening doors now, 15 million apprentice and internship positions. Maybe some of the companies that are represented here by these prominent Americans are part of this, part of the president's initiative to make sure that we've got people coming into the economy and have an opportunity to get the background and training and skills they need to fill the jobs that are opening up in this economy. But there's two other areas that I think are particularly meaningful that the president's made progress on and is committed to. First was, in the progress category, was criminal justice reform. We had done criminal justice reform when I was governor of Indiana. Texas had done it before us. But Congress was never able to reform the federal system with the principles of a second chance that had been spoken about on Capitol Hill, advocated by people left, right, and center, to allow people to earn the right, to have an education, to earn the right to a more just system. And President Trump got it done. Literally, in my time in the Senate, I was there. I was able to speak to them on the president's behalf about what his vision was for criminal justice reform. And the First Step Act was signed into law. And it in so many ways, corrected some inequities that had been set into the law back during the Clinton administration. But one administration after another had never been able to move the Congress to change them. And it's really resonated in the African American community. The president did an event in Las Vegas just the other day. I think it was entitled Prisoners of Hope. But it was people who were graduating from vocational programs that were getting a second chance and a fresh start in life. I met with a group of pastors in the community that's working with local law enforcement and people in the prison system. And you're seeing real results. You're seeing recidivism rates drop. You're seeing lives changed. So that's made a connection. And the last thing I will tell you is, and people in the African American community know this, we have a president who believes that parents ought to be able to choose where their children go to school, whether it's public, private, parochial, or homeschool. And we're going to be champions for school choice. We are. I was in Milwaukee during School Choice Week with our amazing Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. We were in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where literally the governor in Pennsylvania just vetoed a bill that would have opened educational choice scholarships to 50,000 students, and there's an immense waiting list in Pennsylvania today. And I spoke at a wonderful Catholic school. It was 90% minority kids. They spoke 40 languages at this school, and yet the educational attainment and outcomes at the school are remarkable. But the African American community has in my own experience back in Indiana, where we doubled the size of our school choice program when I was governor. The African American community has been ahead of the curve in support of school choice now for decades. And frankly, it's because so many African American families face educational outcomes in some of our most failing and dangerous schools. And it's those families that have been clamoring for the opportunity, like here in the District of Columbia, to choose where their children go to school. And so that's another area that I know, Peter, that we're building support every day, because this is a president who says what he means and means what he says. He wants equality of opportunity. He wants to open doors of opportunity for every American, and African Americans are seeing real results in jobs and opportunity and reforms and educational opportunities.
The kids. Among Americans 35 and under, only 38% give this administration a positive approval rating. Why do the kids belong to Bernie?
Well, I don't think they do. I meet a lot of young people around this country who believe in freedom and are grateful for the progress that we've made under this president's leadership. I really do. But I will tell all of you here in the Hoover Institution, it's such a legendary place, and you've been such a vanguard of liberty for so long. I'll challenge all of you. I think it's not going to be enough for us just to win the next election. We've got to win the next generation. We've got to go out and tell the story. I mean, to think that as many young people as there are being taken in by socialism, by the empty and hollow promises of socialist philosophy is really remarkable to me. But I think it's incumbent on us to tell freedom's story and also to tell socialism's story. I mean, to be out there to make the historical, the economic, and the moral case against socialism. And we'll be doing that. I promise you the President and I will be traveling across the country doing that. But I encourage all of the prominent Americans gathered here and everybody associated with Hoover Institution to take up that challenge. Because I will tell you, I have 3 kids in their 20s. I'll have all 3 of them married off by this spring, which is good. Good progress. But I know this generation of millennials, and they are a freedom-loving generation. I mean, when you and I were growing up, and we heard a song on the radio we liked, we just hoped to remember the name of the song so we could go down to the record store and thumb through the albums to see if we could find the record, right? Now what do kids do? They hear a song they like, they get their phone out, type it in, download it, and buy it. I mean, the idea that young people today could be sold on a system of health care that would allow government bureaucrats to make decisions about the most important issues in their life and in the life of their family is unthinkable. This is a freedom-loving generation. I think if we convey it that way, if we explain to people that the free market is the best pathway toward prosperity and the best pathway to outcomes, we can win the argument. We have history on our side. And so I just, whether it be Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, or if they just flat out call it socialism the way Bernie does, we have got to take the case of freedom straight at socialism. And I have every confidence that as President and I make that case, as people across this country make that case, we're not only going to have a victory for our team in the fall of 2020, we're going to have another victory for freedom in 2020.
You've been very generous with your time, and you're a lovely guy, but you have a couple of members on your staff who are going to give it to me right in the neck if I don't wrap this. A couple of last questions. Actually, this is, take this one as fast as you want to, but it's an important question. We'll return to China really briefly. Our population, 325 million. Our average growth rate over the last decade, between 2% and 3%. The People's Republic of China, 1.4 billion. Their average growth rate over the last decade, something like 8%. Even if you don't believe the official figures, it's tremendous.
Right.
They're more populous. Their economy may soon be bigger than ours. They possess a central authority which is ugly in all kinds of ways but can get certain things done. And we have a 230-year-old constitution. Honestly, when you think of the long-term struggle, and this administration's national security document calls China an adversary, this is the first time this has happened, honestly, are you optimistic?
I'm absolutely optimistic, because I think that we have a president who understands the boundless capacity of the American people and sees a boundless future for our country if we will just continue to hew to the principles and the ideals that frankly are enshrined in that Constitution. And we'll continue to inspire the world. Look, we are at minimum, we're in a great power competition with China. And in my judgment, in the last 25 years, it hasn't been going in a direction favorable to our long-term interests. I mean, increasingly, we've given them access to our economy with limited access to their economy. We've seen them take the trade surpluses and invest them in a military buildup. The Space Force that we just created, which is the first new branch of our armed forces in 75 years. And we continue, we're dominant in space today as much as we are on land and sea and air. But the truth is that China actually established a similar agency a few short years ago. And so, in my judgment, things were not going in the right direction before for the long-term interests of the United States. But with the president putting America first, rebuilding our military, reviving the American economy, and embracing his role as leader of the free world, engaging leaders around the world, including President Xi, in ways that are candid, but demand the kind of change that the American people expect. I have every confidence that we're going to have a future brighter than any of us could possibly imagine. But that's the story. That's the choice we got to take to the American people in this election.
Last question.
It really is.
Last question. It's very easy to imagine an alternative life for Mike Pence. Think of Paul Ryan. He's out of Washington. He's teaching at Notre Dame. He sits on a board. Your friend Mitch Daniels is running Purdue. He sits on corporate boards.
Doing a great job.
Notre Dame, Purdue, these are great institutions. They're both back home in Indiana.
They are.
Instead, you're committed to a campaign in which you're about to embark on months of 18 and 20-hour days, during which you will be insulted, called names, and accused of undermining everything from the Constitution of the United States to the Christian faith. What are you doing? What keeps you in this game?
Well, my first reaction is, so what else is new? Right? I think, number one, it really has been an extraordinary privilege for me to be part of an administration, to serve alongside a president that's accomplished so much in such a short period of time for the American people. I mean, I have to tell you, I served for 12 years in the Congress. I served 4 years as governor of the state of Indiana. But when the call came, I joined this ticket in a heartbeat because I sensed that we were at an important moment in the life of the nation. Another 8 years of welfare state, big government policies, high taxes, more regulation, an internationalist view that saw America as just another country in the world, I thought would set our nation on a path that we might not be able to come back from. And what I heard in our candidate in 2016, and I've seen every day as his vice president, is someone who believes in the American people and believes in this country and believes in the principles of freedom and free markets and the liberties enshrined in our Constitution and limited government and whether it be court appointments, whether it be economic reforms, whether it be rebuilding our military, has just hewn America back. I mean, when he used that phrase, "Make America Great Again," it was clear to me from early on that he had a clear vision in his mind of what that was. And that was an America strong and prosperous and free and leading the free world. And for me to have been able to be a part of that, I can tell you, the criticism comes with the territory when you're in public life. My wife and I have been involved for a while. But to have been a part of an administration that's delivered so much for the American people and can still deliver so much more if we keep our nation on the path of freedom and free markets and the principles enshrined in our Constitution. Any criticism that comes with it, as the old book says, I count it all joy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States.
You are pretty damn good. Thank you all very much.
Egress the way we came in and find the buses. They should be parked out where they dropped you off. So again, wonderful afternoon. The program tonight starts at 6:30. It's the reception. Education Secretary DeVos will be our speaker.